That night, I was heading home from work, planning to watch a movie, when I realized I didn't have any snacks, and for me, movie night just isn't the same without them. So, I pulled into a convenience store on the way home. The lights were on, the door was unlocked, but the sign said, "Closed." I still walked in. Hey, my name is Joshua, but pretty much everybody calls me Josh. I'm 32, and at the time this happened, I was living by myself in Springfield, Missouri. I'd been there for a few years by then. I had a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it was in a decent area. My commute to work wasn't too bad, and honestly, I was pretty settled into my routine. Maybe a little too settled. I worked as a graphic designer for a small digital marketing agency. We did pretty much everything. Social media ads, website graphics, banners, email campaigns, stuff for local businesses. Most days weren't terrible, but whenever we had a big campaign going out, things could get pretty rough. And if you've ever worked with clients on anything creative, you probably know how it goes. You'll send something over at like 3 in the afternoon, hear absolutely nothing for hours, and then right when you're getting ready to leave, somebody suddenly decides the font needs to change, the logo needs to move, the picture doesn't feel right, whatever that means. Then one little change turns into 6 more. So yeah, staying late wasn't exactly unusual for me. Outside of work, my life was pretty quiet. I was single, I lived alone, and most of my friends were either married or in serious relationships by that point. We'd still hang out every now and then, but it wasn't like when we were younger and somebody was always calling you up asking what you were doing that night. Most Friday nights, everybody already had plans. I usually didn't, and yeah, I was on dating apps. Actually, I was on way too many of them. I'd download one, use it for a couple months, get annoyed with it, delete it, and then somehow end up downloading the exact same thing again 3 weeks later. I'd had matches, I'd been on dates too. It wasn't like I'd never met anybody. There was one girl I went out with maybe 3 times, and I actually thought that one might go somewhere. Then she started taking like 2 days to answer a text, and eventually we both just kind of stopped talking. Another date lasted maybe 45 minutes. She was nice. I was nice. We just had absolutely nothing to talk about. You know those dates where both of you are trying really hard to keep the conversation alive? So, you got any brothers or sisters? Yeah. Oh, cool. And then you both take another drink and look around the restaurant. It was basically that for 45 minutes. So after a while, I stopped taking the apps that seriously. I still checked them. I still swiped. Every once in a while I'd match with somebody and we'd talk for a few days. But most of the time, nothing really came out of it. I'm not gonna pretend I loved being single either. There were nights when I'd get home from work, throw my keys down, and the apartment would just feel really quiet. And sometimes I'd sit there scrolling through my phone, seeing people I knew getting engaged, getting married, having kids, buying houses together. Then I'd look around my apartment and be like, well, I got leftover pizza. But I wasn't miserable or anything. I had my routine, and Friday night was probably my favorite part of it. I've always been really into movies, horror movies, thrillers, crime stuff, sometimes some completely stupid action movie where one guy somehow takes out like 30 people and never reloads his gun. I didn't really care. After staring at a computer screen all week and having people tell me to move logos 2 inches to the left, I didn't want to think too hard. So Friday became my movie night. I'd get home, take a shower, change into some old t-shirt and sweatpants, order something, or heat up whatever I had in the fridge, grab some chips or candy, turn the lights down and put something on. Sometimes I'd make it through 2 movies. Sometimes I'd spend 40 minutes trying to decide what to watch and then fall asleep halfway through the first one. That happened more than I'd like to admit, but I liked it. It was just my way of shutting everything off for a few hours. Before I get into this, I'll just say there are some things you experience that you eventually move on from, and then there are things you know you're gonna remember for the rest of your life. What happened that night is definitely one of those things. Anyway, this happened on a Friday. I'd had a long week already, and that day had been especially bad. We were finishing up a campaign for one of our bigger clients, and everybody in the office thought we were basically done by around 5. We weren't. The client came back with another round of changes, then another one. At one point, I remember looking at the clock, and it was almost 8. And I was still sitting there changing text sizes on an ad that I swear looked almost exactly the same as it had 3 hours earlier. A couple people had already left. My boss was still there, one of our account managers was there, and I was sitting at my desk thinking about the movie I was gonna watch when I finally got home. That was honestly the only thing keeping me in a decent mood. I already had the movie picked out. It was The Accountant 2. I'd liked the first one, and a couple people at work kept telling me the second one was actually pretty good, so I'd been wanting to check it out all week. I just kept putting it off because I was getting home too tired. So I kept telling myself, just get this done, go home, take a shower, eat something, put the movie on. That's it. Eventually, sometime around 10:30, we finally got the last version approved. I remember leaning back in my chair and just staring at the screen for a few seconds. I was done. I saved everything, sent the files where they needed to go, shut my computer down, and grabbed my stuff. My boss was still talking about something we needed to handle Monday morning, and I was basically already halfway out the door. I told him, yeah man, Monday. Whatever it is, Monday. He laughed and told me to get out of there. So I did. By the time I pulled out of the parking lot, it was getting close to 11. The drive home from work usually took me about 20 minutes, maybe a little longer depending on traffic. But that late on a Friday, the roads were pretty clear. I had some music playing and was just driving home when, maybe 10 minutes in, I suddenly remembered something. I didn't have any snacks. Like I said, whenever I watched a movie, I liked having something to snack on, chips, candy, whatever. It was just part of the whole thing for me. I could have gone home and ordered something. I mean, that would have been easy enough. But then I figured if I passed a store that was still open, I might as well stop for 5 minutes, grab whatever I wanted and take it home with me. So I started keeping an eye out as I drove. A few minutes later, I spotted a convenience store off the road. I'm not gonna give the name of the place. It wasn't one of the big chains or anything, just a regular little neighborhood store. There was a sign above the front, a couple advertisements in the windows, and the whole inside was lit up. Perfect. I pulled into the parking lot. There weren't any other cars parked out front, but honestly, I didn't think much of that. It was almost 11 at night, and it wasn't exactly a busy part of town. I parked pretty close to the entrance, shut the car off, and walked up to the door. That's when I noticed the little sign hanging behind the glass. Closed. I stopped and looked at it for a second. Then I looked inside. Every light in the place was on. I could see straight through the front windows. The aisles were lit up. The refrigerators were running. Everything looked completely normal, so I stood there thinking, okay, are you guys closed or not? For a second I thought maybe they were cleaning up and getting ready to leave. But if that was the case, I figured somebody would probably be inside. Then I thought maybe someone had flipped the sign around earlier while messing with it or cleaning the door and just never noticed. I mean, obviously I didn't think it had been sitting there saying closed all day. Somebody would have caught that. I reached for the handle mostly just to see if the door was locked. It opened. I kind of stood there with the door halfway open. Hello? Nothing. I leaned inside a little. Hey, you guys still open? Still nothing. At that point, I probably should have just left. And I know saying that now makes it sound obvious. But standing there that night, it really wasn't. The lights were on. The door was unlocked. Everything inside looked normal. There was no gate pulled down, no chairs stacked up, nothing that made it look like somebody had shut the place down for the night. And I really only wanted a bag of chips and maybe something sweet. So I walked in. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not creepy quiet, just nobody was there quiet. I could hear the refrigerators humming along the back wall, and there was some kind of little fan running behind the counter. There wasn't any music playing either, which I guess made the place feel even quieter. I looked over at the register. Nobody. There was a doorway behind the counter that looked like it probably led to a stockroom or an office, so I figured whoever was working had stepped into the back for a minute. I waited there for a few seconds. Then I called out again. Hello? Nothing. I even said, hey, I'm just grabbing a couple things. I don't know why I felt the need to announce that to an empty store, but I did. Still no answer. I looked back through the glass at my car sitting right outside. For maybe half a second, I thought about leaving and finding somewhere else. Then I was like, screw it. If somebody came out and told me they were closed, fine. I'd put everything back and leave. Until then, I was already inside, so I grabbed a small basket near the entrance and started walking through the aisles. I picked up a bag of Doritos first, nacho cheese. Then I grabbed a pack of peanut M&Ms and a bottle of Coke from one of the refrigerators. I remember standing there for a second, looking at the Coke and thinking I probably didn't need that much sugar at 11 o'clock at night. Then I put it in the basket anyway. It was Friday. I walked into the next aisle looking for something else, and every few seconds I'd glance toward the counter expecting somebody to finally come out. Nobody did. I wasn't scared or anything. I was mostly just confused about where the hell whoever was working there had gone, so I kept shopping. I was in one of the aisles looking at a couple other things when I finally decided I had enough. I grabbed one more candy bar, tossed it into the basket, and turned around. And there was somebody standing right behind me. I jumped so hard the basket slipped out of my hand and hit the floor. Oh shit, it was a girl. Hi, she said. She immediately put her hand over her mouth. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. Jesus, I said, putting a hand against my chest. You almost gave me a heart attack. She started laughing. And once I realized what had happened, I started laughing too. I mean, she got me good. I hadn't heard her walking up behind me or anything, so as far as I knew, I was still completely alone. Then I turned around and she was standing like 3 feet away. But after a couple seconds, I stopped laughing. She didn't. She kept going for maybe another 3 or 4 seconds. Not some crazy laugh or anything. It sounded completely normal. It just lasted longer than I expected it to. Long enough that I remember standing there smiling awkwardly, waiting for her to finish. Then she finally stopped. I'm sorry, she said again. Seriously. You're good. Just maybe make some noise next time. She laughed again. I'll try. That was when I actually got a good look at her. She looked like she was maybe 22 or 23. She had long brown hair, kind of wavy, that came down past her shoulders, brown eyes, and a pretty face. She wasn't dressed like an employee or anything, just jeans, sneakers, and a light gray hoodie with the sleeves pushed up a little. She looked completely normal. Honestly, if I'd met her anywhere else, I probably wouldn't have remembered anything unusual about the way she looked. I bent down and picked up my basket. "So, you work here?" "Yeah. Well, kinda. My dad owns the place." "Oh." That immediately made the whole situation make a little more sense. She held out her hand. "I'm Leslie." "Josh. Nice to meet you, Josh." "You too." Then I looked back toward the counter. "Okay, so I gotta ask. I called out like 3 times when I came in." "I know." I looked back at her. "You heard me?" "Yeah." "And you just left me out here?" She started laughing. "No, I was busy." "Doing what?" "Stocking some stuff in the back. You could have yelled, 'Hey, give me a minute.'" "I could have, but you didn't." "Nope." She smiled at me. "Good customer service." "Thank you, I work very hard at it." I laughed. "All right." She looked down at my basket. "So what did you get?" "Nothing exciting." She leaned over slightly to look. "Doritos, peanut M&Ms, Coke, and a candy bar." "Oh, sorry, and a candy bar." "Very important." "Obviously." She looked at everything for another second. Then she looked at me. "Movie night?" "Yeah, actually." She smiled. "Knew it." "How'd you know?" "Come on." She pointed at the basket. "It's almost 11 on a Friday night, and you've got chips, chocolate, and Coke. You're either watching a movie or you have a really weird dinner planned." I laughed. "Okay, fair enough. What are you watching?" "The Accountant 2. "Is that the Ben Affleck one?" "Yeah. I saw the first one." "You like it?" "Yeah, it was pretty good." "Same. That's why I wanted to see this one." She nodded toward the basket. "So this is the full experience, huh?" "Pretty much. Movie, Doritos, M&Ms. Don't forget the Coke." "Sorry." "Movie, Doritos, M&Ms, and Coke." "There you go." She laughed again. And once again, she kept laughing just a little longer than I did. I noticed it because it had happened twice now, but I still didn't really think anything of it. I just figured that was how she laughed. We started walking toward the front of the store. That was when I remembered the sign. "Oh, by the way." "What?" "Your sign says closed." "Oh, yeah. So you know about that?" "Yeah, we're technically closed." I stopped walking. "You're closed?" "Technically." "What does technically closed mean?" She laughed. "My dad went out for a little bit. He's gonna be back soon, and then we're wrapping everything up." "Oh." I looked down at the stuff in my basket. "So should I just put this back?" "No." "You sure?" "Josh, you're already in here." "Well, yeah, but apparently I broke into a closed store." "You didn't break in. The door was unlocked." "That's gonna be my defense." She laughed. "You'll be fine. So I can actually buy this stuff?" "Of course. I'm not gonna make you put everything back now. That would be rude." "I thought you said you were good at customer service." "I'm amazing at customer service." "Right. Best in Springfield." "Clearly." She laughed again. By then, we were back at the counter. I set everything down, and she started ringing it up while we kept talking. "So you help your dad out here a lot?" I asked. "Yeah, mostly Fridays." "Every Friday?" "Not every single one, but a lot." "Sounds fun." "I actually like it." "Really?" "Yeah, you meet all kinds of people." "I guess. And sometimes you get guys who walk into closed stores looking for Doritos." "There you go, keeps things interesting." She laughed. I pulled out my wallet when she gave me the total and handed her some cash. She took it, gave me my change, and I put it back in my wallet without really thinking about it. She bagged everything up and handed it to me. Thank you. You're welcome. I took the bag, but neither one of us really moved. By that point, we'd been talking for a few minutes, and honestly, Leslie was pretty easy to talk to. She was definitely talkative, maybe a little more energetic than I expected from somebody working that late. And yeah, the way she laughed was a little weird, but that was about it. She seemed nice, and I wasn't exactly in a hurry anymore. Leslie leaned against the counter. So you do this every Friday? Do what? Movie night. Pretty much. By yourself? Usually. She smiled. That actually sounds kinda nice. Yeah, I like it. She nodded and smiled, and from there we just kept talking. She was still leaning against the counter, and I asked her, so you do this full time? What, work here? Yeah. She looked at me. Dude, I literally just told you I only come here on Fridays. Oh, yeah, I laughed. Sorry, I forgot. Were you even listening to me? I was, mostly. She laughed. Okay, so what do you do when you're not here? I'm in college. Oh, okay. What are you studying? Psychology. I smiled. Seriously? Why? I don't know. You kinda look like you'd study psychology. She narrowed her eyes at me. What does that even mean? I have no idea. Exactly. She laughed. What about you? I'm done with school. I figured. Wow, thanks. No, I didn't mean it like that. You just called me old. I did not call you old. I'm 32. Okay, yeah, ancient. See? She laughed again. I shook my head. So if you're in college, why are you working here this late? I don't have classes on Fridays. Nothing? Nope. I got lucky with my schedule this semester, so I usually come here and help my dad out. That's nice of you. Yeah, well, don't tell him that. He'll start expecting it. I laughed. So what do you do? I'm a graphic designer. She looked at me for a second. Really? Yeah. For like, a company? Digital marketing agency. She nodded. That makes sense. What makes sense? You being a graphic designer. I looked down at myself. How? I don't know. No, come on. You said it makes sense. She smiled. You notice stuff. What stuff? Little stuff. Like? She pointed toward the bag sitting on the counter. When I was putting everything in there, you moved the Coke because the label was facing the other way. I looked at the bag. I did. Yeah. I don't even remember doing that. I noticed. So that makes me a graphic designer? No, but it tells me you care about how things look. That could mean anything. Okay, but I was right. You already knew what I did. Yeah, but now I know it fits. That's cheating, she laughed. How is that cheating? You can't make the guess after I tell you the answer. I didn't say I guessed it. Exactly. Fine. She folded her arms. You want me to guess something? Sure. Okay. She looked at me, and for a second, she didn't say anything. It wasn't uncomfortable or anything. It just felt like she was actually studying me. Then she looked down at my shoes. You work in an office. I literally just told you I work at a digital marketing agency. I know, I'm warming up. That's terrible. She laughed. Okay, give me a second. She looked at me again. You drove here straight from work. Yeah. You didn't go home first. No. And you probably had a really long day. I smiled. Okay, how'd you get that? She pointed at my shirt. You still have a little sticker on your sleeve. I looked down. There was one of those small round stickers we used around the office stuck near my elbow. I peeled it off. That tells you I had a long day? No, that tells me you came straight from work. Okay, and you look tired. Wow. What? Again, amazing customer service. I'm just saying. You could have stopped it straight from work." She laughed. "Sorry. No, you're not." "No." I smiled. "All right, keep going." She looked at me again. "You live alone." That one got my attention. "How'd you get that?" She nodded toward the bag. "You bought one Coke." "So?" "One candy bar, one bag of M&Ms, one bag of chips. Maybe I don't share. Maybe." She smiled. "But you're going home on a Friday night with one drink, one movie, and enough junk food for one person." I thought about it. "Okay, I'm right." "Yeah." She gave me this little satisfied smile. "Told you. That was actually pretty good. Thank you." Still could have been wrong, but I wasn't. "No, you weren't." She laughed. I was actually starting to enjoy it. It felt like this stupid little game we'd accidentally gotten into. And the more she got right, the more I wanted to see what else she could figure out. "All right," I said. "What else?" She looked surprised. "You want another one?" "Yeah, go ahead." "Okay." She stood there looking at me again. This time she took a little longer. And there was something about the way she looked at me that made me feel like I was supposed to look away first. I don't know why. She wasn't glaring at me. She wasn't doing anything weird with her face. She was just looking right at me. Then she smiled. "You don't cook much." I laughed. "That's what you came up with?" "I'm right." "Actually, no." Her eyebrows went up. "You cook?" "Yeah." "Like actual food?" "Yes, actual food." "Huh. What?" "I got one wrong." "Finally." She laughed. "I don't like this." "You'll survive." "Okay, wait. You cook, but you don't like cooking." I pointed at her. "No, you don't get a second guess." "Why not?" "Because now you're just changing your answer until I say yes." She laughed again. "That's how this works." "That is absolutely not how this works." She kept laughing, and I started laughing with her. By then, I'd gotten used to the fact that her laugh sometimes went on a little longer than mine. It was just Leslie. She laughed a lot. When she finally stopped, she said, "Okay, you do one." "Do what?" "Guess something about me." "Oh no, come on. I don't know anything about you. That's the point." "All right." I looked at her like she'd been looking at me. She immediately smiled. "What?" "Nothing. Stop smiling." "I'm not." "You are." She laughed. I tried to think of something. "You're from Springfield." "That's your guess?" "Yeah." "Wow. What? You're really bad at this." "Am I wrong?" "No." "Then shut up." She laughed again. "That was easy. So we're half of yours." "No, they weren't." "Yeah, they were." "Okay, do another one." I looked at her for a second. "You still live with your parents?" Her smile changed a little. Not in a bad way, more like I'd actually surprised her. "Okay, I'm right?" "Yeah, there we go." "How'd you know?" I shrugged. "You said you're in college. Your dad owns this place. You spend Fridays helping him. Didn't seem like a huge leap." She nodded. "That was actually decent." "Thank you. I'm still better." "Debatable." "It's not." We both laughed, and that was really how the conversation went for a while. Just back and forth. Nothing serious. Nothing that made me think I should get out of there. If anything, I'd completely forgotten that 20 minutes earlier, I'd been standing outside wondering whether I should even walk into the place. I was having fun, and if I'm being completely fair, there was probably another reason I was still standing there too. Leslie was attractive. I liked talking to her. I was single. I wasn't standing there planning our wedding or anything. But yeah, somewhere in the back of my head, I was probably wondering if maybe I'd get her number before I left. I mean, why not? We were getting along. She seemed interested in talking to me, And after all the dating apps and awkward dates I'd been through, meeting somebody naturally like that actually felt kinda nice. So I stayed, and Leslie kept guessing. After a while, the guessing thing kinda died down on its own, not because either of us stopped having fun with it. The conversation just went somewhere else. At some point, Leslie asked me how long I'd been living in Springfield, which got us talking about the area, places we liked, places we didn't, stuff like that. Then I asked her how long her dad had owned the store. "Oh, forever," she said. "Forever." "Pretty much. I was a kid when he got it." "So you basically grew up here?" "Yeah, kinda." She looked around the store. "I used to hate coming here when I was little." "Really?" "Yeah. My dad would bring us here sometimes and I'd be like, seriously? I could be home watching TV right now." I laughed. "And now you voluntarily spend your Friday nights here." "I know. Pretty sad, right?" I wasn't gonna say it. "You were thinking it. Maybe." She laughed. "No, I actually like it now." "What changed?" "I don't know. I guess when you get older, hanging out with your dad doesn't feel like a punishment anymore." "Yeah, I get that." "And Fridays were always fun." "Were? Yeah, are." She smiled. "Fridays are fun." I didn't really think anything of that. She continued. "My brother used to come in too, so usually it was the three of us." "You have a brother?" "Yeah, Jimmy." "Older or younger?" "Older. Not by much, though." "How much?" 2 years. "So he helps your dad too?" "Yeah." She nodded. "Usually." There was a tiny pause after she said it, but then she smiled again. "Honestly, Jimmy does more than I do. I mostly stand around and talk." "I can believe that." Her mouth dropped open. "Wow. I'm just saying, we've been standing here talking for what, like 15 minutes? That's because you won't leave." "Okay. You already paid. This is on you." "That's actually true." She laughed, and again, it went on for just a little longer than the joke really deserved. By then, I'd mostly stopped paying attention to it. I asked her, "So your brother's not here tonight?" "No. Friday night. Thought this was the family hangout." She smiled. "Not tonight." "What? He got better plans?" Probably. "Yeah, friends, maybe." She shrugged. "You know how guys are." "I am a guy." "Exactly, so you know." "Fair enough." She laughed. Then she looked toward one of the aisles for a second. "I used to love being here on Fridays." There was something about the way she said it that caught my attention. "You keep saying 'used to.'" She looked back at me. "Do I?" "Yeah." She smiled. "I guess I do." "So you don't like Fridays anymore?" "No, I do." She paused. "I just don't come here as much since..." She stopped. "Since what?" For maybe a second or two, she didn't answer. Then she gave me this little smile. "Oh, nothing." "What do you mean, nothing?" "Nothing." You literally stopped in the middle of the sentence. She laughed. "It's not important." All right. I could tell she didn't want to talk about it, so I left it alone. I figured maybe there had been some family issue, or something happened with the store. Whatever it was, I'd known her for maybe 20 minutes. It wasn't really any of my business, so I changed the subject. "You like movies?" "Yeah." "What kind?" "Pretty much anything, except really slow movies." "Thank you." She pointed at me. "Right? I hate when people tell you a movie is amazing and then nothing happens for 2 hours." "Yes. And then they tell you, you just didn't understand it." She started laughing. "Exactly. I understood it. I was bored." She laughed even harder. "Okay, I like you." I smiled. "See, now you're making good decisions. Don't ruin it." We talked about movies for a little bit after that. Nothing deep. just stuff we'd watched recently, movies everybody seemed to love that we didn't, things like that. At one point, she asked me if I ever went to the theater by myself. Sometimes. Really? Yeah, why? I don't know. Some people hate doing stuff alone. I'm used to it. The second I said that, she looked at me. Not the quick look people normally give you when you're talking. She actually held my eyes for a couple seconds. It was the same kind of look she'd given me earlier during the guessing game, like she was studying me. Then she said, "You probably spend a lot of time by yourself." I smiled. "Well, yeah, you already figured out I live alone." "I know, so that one doesn't count." I wasn't guessing. "Oh," she smiled. "You just seem comfortable being alone." I thought about that. "What makes you say that?" "I don't know. You came in here by yourself. You're going home to watch a movie by yourself. You said you go to the theater alone." "Okay, when you put it like that, I sound kinda depressing." She laughed. "No, that's not what I meant." "It definitely sounded like it. I mean, you're independent. Nice save. I'm serious." "Sure." She laughed again. Then she looked at me. "But I don't think you actually like being alone as much as you pretend you do." I looked at her. That one landed a little differently. "What makes you say that?" She shrugged. "Just a guess." "A guess?" "Yeah." She smiled. "Maybe I'm wrong." I thought about it for a second. "No, not completely." I knew it. "There it is." "What?" "That little victory face you do whenever you get something right." "I don't have a victory face." "You absolutely do." She laughed. I smiled and shook my head. It was a pretty good guess. That's all I thought it was. She already knew I lived alone. She knew I spent Friday nights watching movies by myself. I'd just told her I sometimes went to the theater alone. It wasn't exactly impossible for her to figure out that maybe I got lonely sometimes. If anything, I was still impressed by how quickly she picked up on stuff, and honestly, I was enjoying the fact that she seemed interested enough to try. Then she smiled. "Anyway, you want to hear something funny about Jimmy?" "Sure," I said. "What about Jimmy?" She smiled. "So, a couple weeks ago, he had this date, right? And he spent forever trying to figure out what to wear." "Okay." "And Jimmy's normally the kind of guy who acts like he doesn't care about that stuff. Like, you could tell him his shirt looks terrible and he'd be like, cool, and wear it anyway." I laughed. "Sounds like a normal guy." "Exactly. But this girl, oh my God, suddenly he cared." She laughed. "He changed his shirt like 4 times. Four, and then he comes to me and he's like, 'Leslie, seriously, which one?' So you're his stylist?" "Basically." "Does he pay you?" "No, that's actually something we need to discuss." I laughed. "So what did you pick?" "This dark blue button-down he has. It looks really good on him. And these black jeans, and I made him change his shoes because the ones he picked were horrible." "What was wrong with them?" "Everything. That clears it up." She laughed. "No, trust me, they were bad." "So he actually listens to you?" "Most of the time." "That's surprising." "Why?" "Brothers don't usually take fashion advice from their sisters." "Well, Jimmy does." She smiled. "We're really close. Like, really close. We do a lot together." "That's cool." "Yeah. He tells me pretty much everything. Girls, dates, problems, all that stuff. Sometimes way more than I actually want to know." I laughed. "And you tell him everything too?" "Pretty much." "Sounds like you guys get along." "Oh yeah, I love him to bits." There was something really genuine about the way she said that. She'd been smiling and joking around the whole time, but whenever she talked about Jimmy, you could tell how much the guy meant to her. She smiled again. I still remember that night. He came back here after the date wearing the exact clothes I picked for him. The blue shirt? Yeah. She laughed, and I told him, "See, you actually look good when you listen to me." What did he say? He told me to shut up. Sounds about right. Yeah, she laughed. But he did look really handsome that night. I remember thinking that when he walked in. Did the date go well? According to him, no. What happened? Nothing happened. That was the problem. I laughed. He came back all disappointed because he couldn't figure out if she liked him. Been there. Right? He was overthinking everything, like, she said this, but maybe she meant this. And then when I said this, she looked at me weird. That definitely sounds like a guy who likes somebody. Oh, he liked her. A lot? A lot. She smiled. He kept asking me if I thought she was gonna text him again. What did you tell him? I told him of course she would. Confident. Because it's Jimmy. She said it like that explained everything. I laughed. What does that mean? Nobody hates Jimmy. Nobody. Nobody. That's a pretty good record. I'm serious. He's just really likable. She smiled. He's funny. He's sweet. He'll literally drop whatever he's doing if somebody needs him. And yeah, he can be annoying as hell sometimes, but that's just because he's my brother. Sounds like you think pretty highly of him. I do. She looked down at the counter for a second. I told him that night, stop worrying about it. She's gonna call you. Nobody can not like you. And did she? Leslie looked up at me. For just a second, she didn't answer. Then she smiled. I don't know. You don't know. She shrugged. We never really talked about it again. I thought that was a little strange considering everything she'd just told me about how close they were, but I didn't say anything. Then she added, I mean, it doesn't really matter anyway. What doesn't? The date. Why not? She looked at me for a second, then she laughed. I don't know, I'm just talking. Okay. She smiled again. But yeah, Jimmy's great. I smiled. You know, I gotta ask you something. What? Did you have trouble with tenses in school or something? She looked at me. What? I laughed. Nothing. You keep switching between is and was when you talk about stuff. She stared at me for a second, then started laughing. Shut up. I'm serious. Maybe I'm tired. Yeah, let's go with that. She laughed again. And that was it. I was just messing with her. I noticed it, but I didn't think there was actually anything behind it. Then she looked at me and smiled. So, you want to keep playing? The guessing thing. She nodded. I think I can do better now. Oh, really? Yeah. She looked straight at me. I know more about you now. I laughed. All right, impress me. Leslie smiled. Okay. She looked at me for a second. You're single. I laughed again. That's your big guess. What? You already know I live alone and spend Friday nights watching movies by myself. That doesn't mean you're single. No, but it's not exactly Sherlock Holmes either. She smiled. Fine. You're single, and you've been single for a while. I tilted my head. How long is a while? I don't know. A couple years? Not quite. Okay. Maybe a year. Getting warmer. She laughed. See? See what? You just changed your answer. I'm narrowing it down. That's called cheating. No, it's not. It absolutely is. She laughed again. I was still having fun with it at that point. Then she looked at me, and there was that pause again. Only this time, it felt a little different. She wasn't looking at my clothes or my hands or anything around me. She was looking directly into my eyes. For maybe 2 or 3 seconds, neither of us said anything. Then she smiled. You use dating apps. I shrugged. Yeah, more than one. Okay, probably 4 or 5. That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, more because she'd gotten surprisingly close. 4 or 5? Yeah. What makes you think that? You just seem like the type. What does that mean? I don't know. She smiled. You're 32, you're single, you live alone. You probably want to meet somebody. Okay, but 4 or 5? She shrugged. Lucky guess. I looked at her for a second. Actually, yeah, pretty close. I knew it. There's the face again. What face? The victory face. She laughed. I smiled, but I remember thinking that was a pretty damn good guess. Still, it wasn't impossible. Plenty of single people were on multiple dating apps. She already knew enough about me to figure I was probably one of them. Then she said, "You probably hate them too." The apps? Yeah. Who doesn't? Exactly. So that one doesn't count. Okay. She leaned against the counter again. You delete them sometimes. I looked at her. What? You get annoyed, delete them, and then download them again. For a second, I didn't say anything. That was exactly what I did. Not once either. I'd done it over and over. Delete an app, tell myself I was done with it. Then a few weeks later, I'd be sitting at home bored and download the same damn thing again. I looked at her. Okay, how'd you know that? She shrugged. I didn't. You just said it. I guessed. That's a pretty specific guess. Was I right? Yeah. She smiled. Then I'm good. I laughed a little. Apparently. She laughed too. But that one bothered me more than the others. I tried to figure out if I'd said something earlier that gave it away. I knew we'd talked about me spending time alone, but I hadn't mentioned dating apps to her. I definitely hadn't told her about deleting them and downloading them again. Maybe she did the same thing herself. Maybe everybody on dating apps did that. That was probably it. At least, that was what I told myself. Then Leslie looked at me again, and this time I noticed it immediately. She stopped smiling. Her face didn't look angry or anything. It just went still. And she stared directly at me. I actually shifted a little because I didn't know what she was doing. What? She didn't answer right away. Then that smile came back. You check them before you go to sleep. I stared at her. What? Your dating apps. What about them? You check them in bed. I gave this awkward little laugh. Okay. And sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night and check again. I wasn't smiling anymore. She was. How the hell would you know that? She shrugged. Another guess. No. She laughed. What? That's not a guess. Why not? Because that's way too specific. But I was right. I just looked at her. She started laughing again, and something about that laugh felt different now. It sounded exactly the same as it had before. That was almost the problem. She was still smiling, still laughing a little longer than she needed to, still acting like we were playing the same stupid game we'd been playing for the last 20 minutes, but I wasn't having as much fun anymore. Did you see something on my phone? She looked confused. What? My phone. Did you see a notification or something? No. You sure? Josh, your phone's been in your pocket. I instinctively touched my pocket. She was right. I hadn't even taken it out. She laughed. Why are you getting weird about it? I'm not getting weird. You are a little. I'm trying to figure out how you're doing this. Doing what? This. She smiled. Maybe I'm just really good at guessing. Yeah, maybe. I said it like I was joking, but I didn't really mean it anymore. She looked at me again, that same look, and by then I was starting to hate it. It was hard to explain exactly what bothered me about it. She wasn't glaring. She wasn't making some creepy face. She wasn't even standing particularly close to me. She would just stop whatever she was doing and look straight into my eyes. Then she'd go quiet, just for a couple seconds. And every time she did it, I started wondering what she was about to say next. This time, she smiled. "You have one person you still think about." I felt my stomach tighten a little. One person? A girl. I didn't say anything. Someone you went out with. I stared at her. She smiled. "You thought it was actually gonna work with her." That one hit me, because immediately I knew exactly who she meant. The girl I'd gone out with 3 times. The one I'd actually liked. The one who eventually started taking forever to answer my texts until both of us just stopped talking. I hadn't told Leslie about her, not one word. I tried to laugh it off. Most single guys probably have somebody like that. Maybe. That's another pretty safe guess. Okay. She kept looking at me. Then she said, "But you still check her profile sometimes." I just stared at her. She smiled. "You do, don't you?" I didn't answer, because I did. Not constantly, not obsessively, but every once in a while. Yeah. I'd look her up. Sometimes just to see if she'd changed her picture or posted something new. It wasn't something I was proud of, and it definitely wasn't something I'd told some random girl I'd met in a convenience store. "How do you know that?" Leslie shrugged. "Josh." "What?" "We're playing a game." "I know, but..." "You wanted me to guess." "Yeah, but how are you guessing that?" She started laughing. "I don't know." She laughed for another few seconds, and I didn't laugh with her this time. I just stood there watching her. When she finally stopped, she still had that same pleasant smile on her face. But something had changed for me. I can't really explain it better than that. Maybe nothing about Leslie herself had changed at all. Maybe it was just the way I was seeing her now. But the energy between us didn't feel the same anymore. 10 minutes earlier, when she'd stare at me like that, I'd thought she was cute. Maybe a little quirky. Now, every time she went quiet and looked at me, I felt myself getting uncomfortable. And her laugh wasn't really making me smile anymore either. It was starting to bother me how long she held on to it. How she could say something that made me feel completely exposed, then laugh like we just shared some harmless joke. I remember looking down at the bag on the counter. I'd already paid. There was absolutely nothing keeping me there. And for the first time since Leslie and I started talking, I actually wanted to leave. A little while earlier, I'd been thinking maybe I'd ask Leslie for her number before I left. Yeah, that wasn't happening anymore. Whatever interest I'd had in taking this conversation somewhere else was pretty much gone. I wasn't mad at her or anything. I just felt uncomfortable now, so I picked up the bag. "All right, I should probably get going." Leslie smiled. "Giving up already? I think I've been analyzed enough for one night." She laughed. "Come on, I was just getting good." "That's exactly why I'm leaving." She laughed again. I smiled, but mostly just because I didn't want to make things awkward. "It was nice meeting you, though." "You too, Josh. Have a good night and enjoy your movie." "You too." I turned and headed toward the door. I remember pushing it open and feeling that cooler air hit me as I stepped outside, and I almost walked straight into 2 guys coming the other way. The older one was reaching for the door at pretty much the exact same time I was coming through it, and the younger guy was right behind him. We both moved to the same side, then both moved the other way. "Oh, sorry," I said. The older guy stepped aside. "No, you're..." Then he stopped. He looked at me, then at the bag in my hand. His expression changed almost immediately. "Hey," What were you doing in there? I looked at him. What? The store's closed. His voice had gotten a little sharper. Didn't you see the sign? Yeah, I saw it. Then what were you doing inside? For a second I didn't understand why he was getting so worked up. Then I realized how it probably looked. Some random guy was walking out of a closed store at 11 o'clock at night carrying a bag full of stuff. No, I bought this. He looked at the bag again. You bought it? Yeah. From who? The girl inside. He stared at me. What girl? The girl working in there. Nobody's working in there. Now I was confused. Well, yeah, there is. He took another look through the open door. I'm the owner. Oh, that actually made me relax a little. Oh, okay, then yeah, your daughter helped me out. Leslie. Neither one of them said anything. I kept talking. She's really nice. I know you guys are closed. I actually almost left when I saw the sign, but the door was unlocked and she said since I was already inside, she'd hook me up. The older guy just stared at me. The younger guy looked at him, then back at me. What did you just say? The older guy asked. About what? The name. Leslie. His face changed, not angry anymore. I couldn't really tell you what it was. The younger guy said quietly, Dad. I looked between them. What? The older guy stepped closer. Who told you that name? Leslie did. I gave this awkward little laugh because I genuinely had no idea what was happening. Your daughter, she's inside. Both of them looked through the door. Then the older guy pushed past me. The younger guy followed him immediately. I stood outside for maybe half a second before turning around and going back in after them. The older guy walked straight toward the counter. There was nobody there. I looked around. Leslie. Nothing. I walked around the end of the counter and looked down the first aisle. Leslie. Still nothing. I pointed toward the back. She might be back there. Both of them looked at me. She was stocking stuff in the back when I came in. That's why she didn't come out right away. The older guy's face went completely still. What? That's what she told me. He didn't answer. He just headed through the doorway behind the counter. The younger guy followed him. I stayed where I was. At that point, I was starting to wonder if Leslie was messing with all of us. Maybe she'd heard them coming and decided to hide somewhere. I don't know. That explanation didn't make much sense either, but nothing else did. A few seconds later, the younger guy came back out. He looked at me. She's not back there. Okay. The older guy came out right behind him. Now he looked angry again, but it wasn't the same kind of angry as before. He looked shaken. What the hell is this? I stared at him. What? Is this some kind of joke? No. You think this is funny? What? No. I'm telling you, she was just standing right here. I pointed toward the counter. I was talking to her like 2 minutes ago. The younger guy was staring at me now too. You said her name was Leslie? Yeah. How do you know Leslie? I don't know Leslie. I just met her. Neither one of them said anything. She told me her name. The younger guy looked at his dad again. I was getting frustrated now. Look, I don't know what's going on here. She said her dad owned the store. You just told me you're the owner, so I assumed she was talking about you. The older guy took a second before answering. I am her dad. Okay. I pointed toward the back. Then I don't understand what the problem is. Maybe she went somewhere else. There is nowhere else. The way he said it made me stop. He looked at me for another second. What did she look like? I described her. Early 20s, long, wavy brown hair, brown eyes, gray hoodie, jeans, sneakers. I didn't even get very far into it before the younger guy looked away. The older guy just kept staring at me. What? I said. Neither of them answered. Then the younger guy asked, "What else did she tell you?" I looked at him. "She told me about you." His eyes came back to mine. "Me? Jimmy, right?" He didn't answer. "You're Jimmy?" After a second, he nodded. "Yeah." That was when I really started feeling like something was wrong. "She said you're her older brother, 2 years older." Jimmy's face changed. "She told you that?" "Yeah." I looked at the older guy. "And she said you own the store. She helps you out here on Fridays." He didn't say anything. "She told me she's in college, psychology." Jimmy was just staring at me. I continued because, at that point, I felt like I had to prove I wasn't making any of this up. "She talked about you guys growing up around this place. She said the 3 of you used to be here together all the time." The older guy swallowed. Then he asked me, "How long were you talking to her?" "I don't know. 20 minutes, maybe longer." "And you're telling me she was standing right here?" "Yes." "Talking to you?" "Yes." "She rang this stuff up?" "Yes." I picked up the bag. I gave her cash. She gave me change. The older guy looked at the register, then back at me. Nobody said anything for a few seconds, and that's when it really hit me. These guys weren't confused anymore. They weren't trying to figure out whether I'd walked into the wrong store or mistaken somebody else for Leslie. They were scared. Jimmy looked at his dad. His dad looked back at him. Then the older man turned to me. I didn't know his name yet, but I could tell from his face that whatever he was about to say wasn't gonna make any of this better. He took a breath. Then he said, "Tell me exactly what Leslie told you." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Just tell me what she said to you." His voice was different now. He wasn't angry anymore. He sounded nervous. So I told them. I didn't go through every little thing we'd talked about. I just told them the important stuff. Then I told them about Jimmy, how she said they were really close, how she'd helped him get ready for a date. The dark blue button-down, the black jeans, even how she'd made him change his shoes. Jimmy didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me. Then he said, "What color did you say the shirt was?" "Dark blue." He looked at his dad. I could see his eyes starting to water. "What?" I said. Jimmy looked back at me. "I had that shirt." "Okay. And the black jeans." He paused. "She picked them out for me." I didn't say anything. Jimmy looked down. "She always did stuff like that." The store suddenly felt incredibly quiet. I looked at the older man. He had turned away from me. For a few seconds, neither of them said anything. Then he wiped his face with his hand and turned back around. "My name's Brad." I nodded. "Josh." "Josh, did Leslie tell you anything else about that date?" "Yeah." I looked at Jimmy. "She said you came back here afterward." Jimmy's eyes stayed on me. "She said you thought it went badly. You weren't sure if the girl liked you." He looked down again. "And Leslie told you that?" "Yeah." "What did she say?" I thought about it. "She said she told you not to worry about it, that the girl would call you." Jimmy gave this tiny smile, but there were tears in his eyes now. "Yeah." He nodded. "That's exactly what she told me." I just stood there. At that point, I knew there was something they weren't telling me. Brad took a breath. "Did she tell you what happened after Jimmy came back here?" "No." "She didn't mention anything about this place?" I thought about it. "Kind of." "What do you mean?" "She said she used to love being here on Fridays, and then she started saying something about not coming here as much since something happened." Brad stared at me. I asked her what happened, but she wouldn't tell me. Jimmy looked at his dad again. Brad nodded slowly. Then he looked at me. There was a robbery here. I didn't say anything. It happened late at night. Jimmy had just gotten back from his date. I looked at Jimmy. He nodded. Brad continued. Leslie was here. Jimmy and I were here too. He stopped for a second. Two guys came in. His voice was getting harder to listen to. They had guns. They wanted the money from the register. They wanted our phones, whatever we had. He looked toward the counter. We weren't gonna fight them. Nothing in this store was worth somebody getting hurt over. Jimmy was staring at the floor. Brad continued. But Leslie, he stopped. I waited. She tried to call the police. Jimmy closed his eyes. Brad looked away from me. I told her not to. I told her just give them what they want. His voice cracked a little, but that was Leslie. She was stubborn. He wiped his face again. One of them saw what she was doing. He didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he said, he shot her. I felt my stomach drop. Brad looked toward the floor. We called an ambulance as soon as they left. She was still alive when they took her out of here. Jimmy turned away. Brad's eyes were red now. We went to the hospital with her. He took another breath, but she didn't make it. I stared at him. For a second, I genuinely didn't understand what he was telling me. What do you mean she didn't make it? Brad looked at me. She died, Josh. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I looked toward the counter, then toward the aisle where I'd first seen her. No. Brad didn't answer. No, I was just talking to her. I know what you're saying. No, you don't understand. I wasn't in here for 30 seconds. We talked for like 20-30 minutes. Brad just looked at me. She took my money. I held up the bag. She gave me change. Jimmy looked at the bag. I was standing right there talking to her. Neither of them said anything. I looked back toward the counter again. My brain was trying to find some other explanation. Wrong daughter, wrong Leslie, somebody who worked there who happened to know the family. Anything. Then I remembered something. When did this happen? Brad didn't answer immediately. Then he told me August 10th. I just stared at him because I knew what day it was. That's today, Brad nodded. 1 year ago tonight. I felt this cold feeling go through me. Jimmy rubbed his face with both hands. Brad continued. That's why we closed early tonight. He looked around the store. We weren't gonna stay here. He paused. Not tonight. Jimmy nodded. We were home most of the evening. Brad looked at him, then back at me. We always spend this night together. Me, Jimmy, my wife. We have dinner. We talk about Leslie. His voice cracked again. There isn't a day that goes by that we don't talk about her. He looked toward the counter. But this night, he shook his head. This one's hard. Nobody said anything. Then Jimmy looked at me. We really were that close. I looked at him. Me and Leslie. He swallowed. She wasn't exaggerating about that. His eyes filled again. She was my best friend. I didn't know what to say. Jimmy looked toward the back of the store. I wish she hadn't been here that night. Brad put a hand on his shoulder. For a few seconds, all three of us just stood there. Then I said, I don't understand. Brad looked at me. Neither do I. No, I pointed toward the counter. She was right there. I believe you. That surprised me. You do? Brad nodded slowly. I don't know what I believe happened in here tonight. He looked at Jimmy. But you knew things. Jimmy nodded. Things you couldn't know. I thought about the blue shirt, the jeans, the date, the conversation Jimmy had with his sister afterward. Then Jimmy pulled his phone out. He tapped through it for a few seconds without saying anything. Then he turned the screen toward me. It was a picture of him and Leslie. I recognized her immediately. Same face, same brown eyes, same smile. I felt my stomach drop all over again. Jimmy watched my face. That's her? I didn't even have to think about it. Yeah, I looked at the picture again. That's Leslie. Neither of them said anything. For a few seconds, I just stood there. I didn't really know what else to say. Eventually, I looked at Brad and Jimmy. I'm really sorry about Leslie. Brad nodded. Thank you. Jimmy didn't say anything. He just gave me a small nod. I looked down at the bag I was still holding. This is probably a stupid question, but can I take this? Brad looked at the bag. Yeah, you paid for it. It's all there. You're good. Okay. I thanked him, told them again I was sorry, and left. When I got back to my car, I put the bag on the passenger seat and just sat there for a minute. I remember looking at those snacks and thinking how stupid the whole thing was. That was why I'd stopped there. A bag of Doritos, some M&Ms, a Coke and a candy bar, and now I didn't even feel like touching any of it. Movie night was pretty much ruined too. Eventually I started the car and drove home, and honestly, that entire drive is kind of a blur. I just kept thinking about Leslie, not how any of it was possible, just kept thinking about the conversation. Because as weird as this might sound after everything I just told you, I'd gotten kinda attached to her in that short amount of time. I liked Leslie. Before things started getting uncomfortable, I was having a genuinely good time talking to her. And it had been a while since I'd had a conversation like that with somebody, especially somebody I'd just met. We joked around. We talked about stupid stuff. We talked about family. She teased me. I teased her. And then there was the way she could look at me for a couple seconds and somehow say something that felt like it came from inside my own head. Yeah, it freaked me out. But looking back at it now, there was something strangely personal about it too. It felt like she understood me. Maybe more than I wanted her to. I got home that night and never watched the movie. I didn't eat the snacks either. I just sat there for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened, and even now, after all this time, I still don't know what to call that night. I can't explain how she was standing in that store exactly 1 year after she died. I don't think I ever will, but I know that conversation happened, and whether I should call it a scary experience, a beautiful one, or something somewhere in between, I know I'm gonna remember it for the rest of my life.